crazy when you're in a place like that.
Hey there, John.
For very long.
Okay, I'm losing my voice.
Met me on the trail and asked about.
Doesn't sound good this time of year.
Yeah. Let's see if these little cough drops help.
Along the river there, but I said, you're allergic to soybeans or corn, you go up and... Oh, Bob.
Robert.
Hey, John, how are you? Back from your sojourn, are you?
Oh, yeah. Back from 2 screaming grandchildren.
You had a nice trip, did you?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I saw him in.
As long as I don't have
saw
to
that
feed
in
them
A
and
week,
change.
2 weeks, or?
So we're gonna have to
10
wait
days.
for a number of
It
other,
was,
like,
yeah.
more environmental
Yeah.
things, so, you know,
Well,
let
that's
me know
good.
if you're
Had
interested
super
in
flights
serving.
over and back.
Yeah, well, that one committee
You have
you asked me about
grandchildren.
What's that?
when I came on the board last
Yeah,
spring.
too.
That's the one that meets on last
Yeah,
Tuesday
where
of
it
the
was,
month. That's a
Utah?
direct
I
contact.
don't know.
Iowa.
Iowa?
Yeah.
Is anything else that interests you that, you know, he served on, I don't know, because he was like on 3 or 4.
So the big Iowa
So he's
football
resigned.
team,
Thank
you
you.
know,
You're
so.
welcome.
That's the main reason that got me here tonight. Anticipation of that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
they're
You want
playing.
to do the...
Iowa's playing pretty good there, huh?
Yeah, the
How's yours?
defense,
They're good, Bob. How
the
are you?
defense is,
6-0, huh?
it's always
Yeah,
defense, I'll tell you.
Going a little hoarse, but it's okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
New here.
How's life?
good,
Oh, right, so we can see what
going
we're,
along.
Does it
What
Did
the
a lot of
broadcast-
biking when I was over at Iowa,
yeah, that's the way, that's the way, yeah, so we can just see.
How long were you down there?
10 days. Did probably 70 to 200
Make it
miles.
to a football game?
No, Jesus, you want to see that place football game. Don't do within 5 miles of it, you know?
Book it about like Notre Dame about a year or two
You have a
ahead.
quorum
Yeah,
tonight,
right.
Miriam?
We need you, we need you.
They have trains.
Is Michael be here?
Cotton those guys in.
Miriam, Mike, you expect Mike here?
Right, Mike never called me, so. If we have 5, we have a quorum,
Yep.
so.
So,
Good fine.
seeing that it's 6:32, I'll call the tonight's planning board meeting into order. And I'll apologize in advance for having a hoarse voice. President tonight is myself, John Krugerberg, the chairman, John Ranlett, vice chair, John Kelly, selectman's representative, Paul Wilson, and Bob Dragon. Seeing that we have a vacancy, I'll appoint Bob Dragon to be an alternate tonight, voting member.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda are public comments. If there's anything that anybody in the audience would like to say on an item not on tonight's agenda, you're welcome to speak now. Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4, administrative matters. There are 2 items. The first is to review the minutes of October 1st. There are a few typos that I caught, but just going through the minutes very quickly. Any issues on page 1? Or page 2? I'm sure that we can correct on the 4th bullet under Dennis Prescott, the word form should be from. And then the 3rd bullet from the bottom, the word should be description as opposed to what's misspelled there. Page 3. On the 1st bullet, second to last line, chapter with should not be there. The word with. And finally, there is no last page on page 4. It's blank. Would anybody like to move acceptance of the minutes as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we accept the minutes as amended.
Is there a second for that motion? So the motion was moved by Mr. Ranlett and second by Mr. Dragon. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay. Please note that Mr. Ahern has now joined us. The second item under administrative matters is just a quick announcement, especially for people watching us on TV. There's going to be a public health exercise this Saturday, October 17th. Lunch is going to be provided. It's from 9:45 to 12 noon at the Winnisquam Regional Middle Schools. If there's any questions about that, I'll let Miriam, should they contact you?
Yes, they can contact me.
Please contact the town
And the
planner.
Winnisquam Regional Schools is in Tilton, so just so everyone knows that.
Okay, moving on to item number 6, new business. The first item's been deleted from the agenda. The second item is conceptual subdivision review, a discussion on proposal from Jeff Brown to combine 12 lots and re-subdivide into 3 new lots. Mr. Brown here? Yes. Why don't you come up and introduce your concept to us, please?
Thank you very much. I'm Jeff Brown, and I'm here on behalf of Plymouth Woods Limited Partnership. I'm a principal of that group, and it's a partnership between myself and Dick Hanaway. And we are proposing to revisit the Mountain View Farm subdivision, which was done and completed in 2005, I believe. And we would propose to modify that approved subdivision, taking a portion of that 12 lots and reducing them down to 3 lots. And the purpose of that is to create a lot that's almost 5 acres in size for the purposes of constructing some workforce housing, affordable housing, on the larger lot. We would propose to construct 24 units on that site. And we are looking for the board's guidance on the proposal, on the approach. We recognize that the land is in the agricultural zone and requires a special exception from the ZBA. And so our questions are centered around the subdivision itself, the re-subdivision, the concept, and then how we would proceed to secure a special exception, perhaps in parallel with subdivision approval and site plan review. I'd like to introduce Jeff Lewis, who is our engineer with North Point Engineering. Also in attendance is Dale Blackie, the owner of the property, as BICO LLC is the owner of the property. We also have another representative here, Ignatius McClellan, who is with Northern New England Housing Investment Fund, and they are our consultants helping us put together the package for financing and approvals. I'll let Jeff present the plan here, and between all of us, hopefully we can answer your questions.
Hi, I'm Jeff Lewis from North Point Engineering. Jeff gave you a pretty good overview of what they're trying to do. What I was just going to do is point out kind of what we have here, what you have before you on this concept plan. It's a little bit hard to follow because what we have an existing subdivision, the Mountain View, which comes off of Gresham Street right down here at the bottom of the plan on the Fairgrounds Road. And then there's another cul-de-sac. There's a cul-de-sac that was designed and approved. It comes up in here like this, and you can just kind of see it lightly on that plan. And it's got 12 lots on that subdivision. Those are all existing lots. The road obviously hasn't been built yet, and the plan is to consolidate all those lots, including that roadway, and then re-subdivide into these 3 lots. 2 of them, these 2 kind of back lots back here, would be part of the cluster subdivision, or remain part of the cluster subdivision. And this big lot here would be utilized for the proposed multifamily development. So what we've been trying to do is really come up with a lot that works out front for the proposed layout. They're looking to do 24 units in a layout probably similar to this. I'm not sure if we blended those out or not, but that has 4 6-unit buildings. So in trying to come up with an area for this lot, we're really backing into the minimum lot area that we would need based on the zoning ordinance. And the way the zoning ordinance reads is that for 6 units, every 6 units, you need 53,560 square feet of lot area. So that correlates to about 4.92 acres of land that we need for the 24 units. So we're looking at that requirement of being 4.92 acres is where we come up with the proposed lot line in the back of this lot right here. So you got this kind of odd-shaped lot that has a little bit of frontage on Fairgrounds Road right out here, and a little bit more frontage out here via Allen Avenue, which is actually a private street. Allen Ave is actually part of this lot, but there's a private easement over the street, so it's allowed to be accessed by the residential lots on either side of it. But what we're showing here, what we're indicating is a 4.92 acre lot that includes this portion of Allen Ave. With that 4.92 acres would then be allowed under the zoning law 24 multifamily units, obviously subject to a special exception from the ZBA. One of the things that we're looking at, and I guess wanted to get some input from you folks on tonight, is we also have a frontage requirement associated with this lot, which is 100 feet of frontage. And the primary access we're going to use we're proposing to use is Allen Ave, which is constructed back about this point back here. It's not quite to a city standards, but it's close to it. It's not going to be upgraded to the city standards, whether it's actually a dedicated road or remains a private road. I think the intent would be to build it to the town standards. But the idea is that it would remain a private road, and we'd extend it far enough in here, the private portion of it, before we came into the development so that we could have 100-foot frontage off of this private street. Our understanding was that there was some precedence in town on other projects where that was allowable to consider that, or to utilize that private street frontage as your frontage for your lot. So that's one critical thing that we see it as part of this project in order to move forward, because would be proposing to utilize the entire 4.9 acres to get the density. And which again kind of gets us to where this back line is back here. So we've really been focusing on this lot right here. The two remaining lots are really the leftover land, and there's plenty of room back there for two cluster lots. The lots are each over 1.2 and 1.4 acres, so they're larger than they need to be for the cluster. The idea there is that we basically maintain this strip of land here, which was reserved for the cul-de-sac, and just turn it into part of this lot with an access easement over it, so we have a shared driveway coming from Crescent Street back to these two lots back here, and they'd really just be back lots that are part of the cluster subdivision. So we have two single-family cluster lots and then one multi-family lot being designed for 24 units. I think as Jeff explained, the intent right now would be for the owner, for Mr. Blackie to come in with a subdivision plan. That'll be the next step for a formal application, proposing to consolidate the 12 lots that are there now and subdivide out these 3 lots. At the same time, this group will be coming in with a proposed site plan on this lot, and we'd be advancing that to the zoning board for special exception. And obviously coming to you folks, hopefully at the same time as the subdivision, or right on the heels of that. That's basically it, unless I'm missing something that we want to touch on. We were interested in any feedback on the project as a whole, or any specifics on the issue of frontage.
Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Marion a question?
Sure, please.
Marion, could you give us guidelines as to what we are supposed to do on a conceptual plan? We're not supposed to get too much into detail.
Right. What you're supposed to do with conceptual is just, if you see any major roadblocks, something that that you want them to be aware of, something to look at. I know before we were sort of talking about Yetton Road, and there was a historic site, and there was wetlands, and there was floodplain, that kind of thing. So if you see any kind of major concerns or major roadblocks, you alert them at this point. But it's not to be interpreted as, a green light.
Yeah, okay. On part of that, at least on Page Street, on the backside of Page Street, as I understand it, is some wetland back in there. And that would be a question I might like to ask.
Okay.
The other is that if you have to within the Allen Avenue, I believe, will that infringe on any of the property owners on either side? Because I would assume that Allen Street is, or Avenue, whatever you want to call it, is rather narrow, as I can remember. So I'm wondering if by putting it up to town specs, will that mean going on to other people's property?
Yeah, we don't anticipate that it will. The pavement's rather wide out there now. It's certainly not narrow.
It's a 50-foot easement.
But it's close
Is
to
it a 50-foot
right away, and there's over 20 feet of pavement out there right now. So we anticipate minor widening.
The other thing is the capacity of the sewage plant and the water, town water, is that sufficient to put in that many units? I know the sewage plant, at least now, is like pretty close to 85% capacity, and I'm not too awfully sure whether you put in, how many units going to be in there?
24.
24 units.
I spoke with Kevin Lincoln about it. He felt that there's probably going to be adequate capacity to serve the development, but there probably will be some impact fees due for some of the upgrades that took place out on Fairgrounds Road a number of years back. So there'd be some payback on some of those.
I'm just wondering, because they're trying to get like $6 million improvement, because they figure that at this time they're pretty well at capacity of 85%. I think the state's telling them that they're pretty well at capacity. So that was a question I'd like to have answered sometime.
Are there any other questions from the board?
One other thing
Yes.
is, in which I probably shouldn't ask, but is this a taxable entity? It is, okay.
Do you have an idea how many bedrooms will come into these units?
There's a mix. It's mostly 2-bedroom units, and there are 3 or 4 1-bedroom units and 2 3-bedroom units.
So you've got about 45
So
45 bedrooms?
something like 45 bedrooms, perhaps. The mix isn't set in concrete yet as far as the final mix, but it's in that range.
And that's big enough for that's, sorry about that, just municipal water and sewer, so I'm making, go ahead, sorry.
I see they have a play area here. Will they also have access to the lake and the play area that's part of the other development?
Intended, no.
Okay.
No. That's part of the Mountain View Farm subdivision and their common area.
I would think that what would probably come up down the line, and I have a feeling based on the size of the properties down lower and then up on the side, but it wasn't the development put in by under open space. Yeah, so
Cluster.
so I'm sure there's enough free space out there to offset 24 more units, but we would want to make sure those numbers add up.
Well, I think with that original, and that it was included in that whole area.
Yeah, that's why I said
That one lot.
I think the intent is to pull this particular piece of land out of the
Yeah.
cluster development altogether, so it'll stand on its own as a separate individual lot and meet the guidelines that are required under a special exception.
Well, I'm just saying, as a matter of procedure, excuse me, as a matter of procedure, since we approved the first plan under open space development guidelines, if you suddenly took out 12 units and then put in 24, you'd be changing the number of units that would be served by the amount of open space that was designated. But again, I think it's just procedural, because I think there's a lot of open space.
What's the remaining, what's the remaining acreage up the hill? It's something like 80 acres or something?
Yeah, it's 100 acres total.
Yeah.
Have we given you enough guidance in terms of the questions that you've come here with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, clearly what we're just looking for is anything that might jump out at you as a major impediment to bring this forward. And
I'd like to, somewhere along the way, I'd like to have a top map as to, or type of top map that would show the wetlands and stuff like that, as far as that's concerned. Because
our understanding is that the entire Mountain View Farm subdivision was delineated for wetlands back some years ago, and the existing maps that show wetlands are on land that's not part of this change. In other words, in fact, you can see on this map here a little indication of some wetlands. That's the closest.
I'm wondering whether that road, if that's going by backside of Page Street, I just wonder if that road is going through wetlands.
Oh, I see. Well, you can show them where it's indicated over on the right there.
The wetland this is the wetland that was mapped as part of the Mountain View subdivision, and this road was designed and approved without a wetland impact. So we're not moving that from where it's previously been approved. So based on the wetland mapping that was done at the time of that subdivision, there's no wetlands anywhere within this impacted area here.
And how long ago was maps?
Well, I guess that was done at the time Mr. Blackie did his development, so how many years? 4 years?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
3 or 4 years ago.
4 probably.
Yes, Mr. Dragon.
Probably I missed it. How many units would we do? We're going to reduce the number of lots from 13 to 3 lots. We're going to put in more housing, multifamily housing. How many units are we talking about?
24 units as part.
How many?
24 as part.
24.
Of multifamily, yeah.
Okay. Because I was looking at the evaluation. So the petitioner is proposing to combine 13 lots into 3 lots and meet the subdivision regulations. Since the proposal is to significantly decrease the number of lots, any kind of previous impact should be lessened. Would that be true? They're decreasing the number of lots, but they're going to add more units. Am I correct?
but I was reviewing it under subdivision standards, so subdivision standards isn't looking at the number of units. You look at that for the site plan.
Well, I would think there's going to be more impact with more units. Would that be
yeah, if you look at it from the site plan criteria, but I was looking at the subdivision.
I know the subdivision part's okay.
Yeah, just from, purely subdivision, you're going from 13 to 3, so by subdivision standards.
No, I don't have any objection. It's just that we're saying we're decreasing, but actually we're increasing.
We're increasing number of units.
That's the only thing I'm saying, so to make sure everything else falls in place for the increase in the impact, that's all.
Right.
Thank you.
So this is merely for the subdivision?
Well, it actually, the proposal originally was for subdivision, but Jeff called me up and said, could he discuss the site plan too? And that's absolutely fine, because that's what we're doing with our second agenda item. We're doing subdivision and site plan at the same time. I only reviewed subdivision because that's what was submitted to me, but I don't have any problem with them talking to you about, 24 units, so.
But it doesn't change the conceptual plan?
Right. It just then addresses what Bob Dragon was saying. From a site plan perspective, you're talking about more units.
Right.
From subdivision,
Wilson?
you're talking about fewer lots, so.
Mr. Wilson?
Just for clarification, the 2 existing homes that have been built, the 2 new homes that have been built as part of the subdivision, do they straddle Crescent Street or Page Street?
This right
No,
here.
they straddled down.
They Page
Crescent Street?
Crescent Street,
Yeah, thank you.
Page Street is right here, and those 2 are here.
Yeah, Crescent Street.
Mr. Brown, did you want to say something earlier?
No, I was actually agreeing with Mr. Dragon in that I would suggest that, yes, the impact is greater with more units.
Are there any other questions from the board? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is another conceptual subdivision and site plan review. Discussion on a proposal from Jeff Lewis to subdivide 1 lot into 2 commercial lots and to develop 1 lot for a retail store on Boulder Point, zoned industrial commercial development.
around my boards here. Same, so I'm sure we submitted the same similar handouts here. All right. This project precedes my involvement in it, and some of you, probably most of you, are hopefully familiar with it. It's subdivision of a commercial lot on Boulder Point Drive for the purpose of creating a lot for a tractor supply store. With me tonight is Mike McGinley, who's the property owner, Richard Tamboni, who's the developer of the tractor supply store, Kevin French is the surveyor of the property. So they're available for any questions or for either way, I guess. This property, there was a conceptual presented to the board, I want to say a year and a half ago, or thereabouts, for a tractor supply store, basically in the same location up here. This property is coming up Boulder Point Drive from Penny Mountain Highway, which would be right about here. North, up on the plan, and as you come up the road, there is the back connection for back drive to Walmart right here. Into the Walmart parking lot, which of course is gated right now. As many of you may be aware, Mr. McGinley currently is proceeding with design plans to align the intersection with Boulder Point at the intersection of Tenny Mountain Highway and provide traffic signals down there. Those plans are going through review at DOT right now. Is very close to having those approved. That construction, and when that is done, from the town, is that the gate from Walmart will then be opened up, so there will be access to Walmart, to and from Walmart from Boulder Point Drive. The proposal here, which we have conceptual and are about ready to advance into final design, I just wanted to bring it before you, really for any comments you may have, and just, I guess, talk about similarly the process that we expect to go through. Right now, there's one large lot here. It's just over 9 acres. There is a back portion of the lot that's encumbered with a conservation easement. My understanding, that's part of remnant parcel from Walmart when that was constructed. But the idea is to subdivide the property right here, right about in the middle, and create a 4.9 acre parcel on the south side and a 4.4 acre parcel on the south side and north side. And have a shared driveway that will be constructed as part of the tractor supply store, which would be coming in first, and then allow future access to this, what we're calling the future development lot, future pad area. The tractor supply site is pretty much a prototype site plan from Tractor Supply. Included in that set, I think on the last sheet, it's prototype standard building elevations of Tractor Supply to get the idea of what the store will look like. I think the store that's featured there is the same size store, and he would be proposing here. Obviously, we'd have full architectural plans. We come in with a formal application, but just to give you an idea of what that looks like. It's pretty straightforward layout for a commercial site. There's a 19,000 square foot building here. They have a concrete or fenced-in outdoor display area. It'd be designed for truck maneuvering around the whole building, parking in the front. The intent would be to design that site in compliance with the site plan regulations. One thing that's I guess a little unique, or one thing we did want to bring to the attention of the board that is likely to happen, and the way we're proceeding with the design is that due to the sloped nature of the land right now, we're looking at kind of lowering the top half of the site, which would be a cut area of the site, and generating some fill for the lower area of the site, where it kind of level off the two sites. And what we'd like to do is, as part of the site development for Tractor Supply, be able to come in and create as much of a pad area on this site as we can. So Mr. McGinley would like to clear the majority of the lot on here that he's going to need for future development and be allowed to place a lot of the fill on this property with whatever stabilization we need as part of that work, so that hopefully in this summer, next fall, or as soon as he can and has another user to come in here, you can have this lot ready to go, and basically, almost a pad-ready condition. So one of our objectives is to talk with the state and the alteration of terrain program to see how they may allow us to proceed in getting a permit for this site, really just for the placement of fill, the clearing, and the grading, without any formal plan to develop it at this time. That similar question, I guess, we raised to the board. If you would have any concerns with that, us coming in as part of the Tractor Supply site plan with a temporary or interim grading plan for this lot. Obviously, we wouldn't want to leave the site in any condition that would be potentially hazardous or have any erosion potential, but something we could address as part of the design. Because this will be a separate lot, obviously, and we don't want it. Once Tractor Supply is built, it'll be Mr. McGinley's lot, and whatever he does on that would then need formal approval through the board.
So I have a question. So just to be clear, so when you're doing the cut and fill, then you're talking about stabilizing it afterwards. You'd have like a stabilization plan, or you'd put some kind of notes on your plan, correct?
Right.
That you would seed it or something.
Yeah, that's what we're getting to. I think the second sheet in there is our preliminary grading plan. And we're estimating that we have about 20,000 yards of material and rather than hauling that off-site or stockpiling it somewhere, we'd like to just be able to dump it on. Be able to place it on the out parcel, which will require a significant slope. I mean, ultimately there may be a retaining wall in here. It really depends on what the ultimate buildable area is needed out here for the future use. But certainly there's going to be some fill that's needed on that site. We'd like to make use of the fill of the material from the Tractor Supply site while during construction, place it, compact it, and get the site as high as we can. And there will be a fill slope on the downhill side, which we would intend to stabilize, and install whatever temporary drainage we need with that. And that's something that I think the details of that we'd obviously work out with the town's engineer as well as the state who will be reviewing that.
Questions?
Yep, Mr. Kelly.
Okay. May I ask Marion?
Yeah, please.
How big a lot do you need for commercial purposes on Tenny Mountain Highway?
Well, 1 acre.
1 acre?
Yes.
So presumably, this is 4 acres, so you get 4 more commercial pieces of property, or whatever you want to call it, in there. And we've got a sign now that's 100 feet high by 50 feet wide, or something like that, for all these different stores that are going up there on Boulder Point. We've got a community sign, for a better word.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if we put 4 more businesses up there, and plus this up on the upper level, because at one time that was just going to be one sign for the tractor company.
Right.
Now
Actually,
we got 4 more, and they can have 100 feet apiece, so that's
right.
400 feet, more feet of sign that you're going to put on.
Right. And actually, Mr. McGinley identified that problem before, and I recommended that he talk to Brian Young, which he's done. And so they've worked out that you've talked with Brian Young, and it's going to be 1 directory sign.
Yes.
But how big is that sign going to be?
Oh.
You got 4, 5, 6, 600 feet of sign.
I think Brian Young and I and the developer recognize the town's concerns for signage, And clearly, we'll work in a professional manner to give the town a very nice sign down the bottom of the road. Miriam worked with us last year in your zoning ordinances that was approved by the town. So I think we're all on the same page. I think that by the time we come back with our final plans, you'll be pleased with the signage that we present.
Somewhere along the way, could we see?
I'm sorry?
Somewhere along the way, could we see the progress of that sign?
Absolutely, sure.
Before the final finale?
Right. Well, with our amendment from last year, they can present their sign as part of site plan review, so I would recommend you do it as part of site plan review. But their proposal is just to take that one lot and divide it into two, so they're not looking to divide it into four.
When they first started, they proposed this as all one lot. So
I see
we
what you're
keep
saying.
proposing and proposing and proposing, and that seems to be a habit with Plymouth, New Hampshire. They start out with what everybody wants to hear, and then they keep chopping it away in little teeny pieces, and eventually they get what they wanted in the first place. So proposal, I don't go along with.
Okay. Well, then we'll just recommend that you bring the directory sign with the site plan review.
Okay. The other is, I'm not too awfully sure, and I'm certainly not an engineer, so I don't know what a lot of these lines are, but could you just show me about how far up that embankment it's going to be sloped of that upper lot? Just, could you do it on the other side? Just sort of point out where it's going to go, because I'm not, as I say, I'm not an engineer, and I don't know.
On which lot, the tractor supply lot?
No, where you're going to have to cut back to make an embankment to, right, on that
We
lot.
have the grades, basically right in here, it would be the top of.
Right, but are you going to grade the bottom of that at all?
This area here?
No, the bottom, right on the very top of the tractor plan.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the idea would be that, and I'm not sure the logistics of how we would do it, but this whole area here would be graded.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if the tractor store is going to be there, and then in back of the tractor store, you're going to have to make an embankment, right? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm bottom side up, I thought Boulder Point, where's Teddy Mountain Highway on that plan
Right
anyway?
about here where my arm is.
Okay, so
you're coming up Boulder Point this way.
okay, and then, okay, so then, so that lower lot is going to be graded somewhat?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is the upper lot has to be graded too in back of the store?
Yep. I mean, really the parcel, I mean, if you look at the existing contours, let's see, we go from, it's about 60 feet of fall from this property line down to this property line, across the property, this being the high end.
I just, as I say, I'm certainly not an engineer. I know we had another Blueberry development, and they didn't put the grade the way they should, and if they had graded it the way they should, it would be somewhere, and the bottom of it would be somewhere in the middle of Highland Street.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to have an exception on that, and I just don't want to.
Right.
I want to make sure, I'd like a contour design, not a flat design, of what's going to happen with all this elevations and all that.
Sort of a
stuff.
squirrel's eyes view.
Yeah, I'd like a cut view of it, as far as the way it is now, from the medical to the Tenny Mountain. I would assume you're going to make it like steps.
Right.
Somewhat, and I'd like to know, that's number one, and number two, by grading it, doing some grading, I would assume that's going to cut that down less than 4.4 acres, that other lot, buildable area.
Yeah, there'll be a detention basin in the back, and there's already a conservation easement.
Yeah.
So it's certainly less than 4.
That's what I'd like to see, is a cut type of thing.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I've got several questions. In the upper part of the lot that's intended to be built on now, by upper I mean higher elevation, what is the grade, the proposed grade, coming from the existing, from the edge of the property down to the pad?
What is the grade?
Yeah.
There's, we have a slope in from the property line down to what I'll call the edge of the pad, is the edge of this
Right.
outdoor display area. There's about a 10-foot drop.
So about a 10-foot drop over what distance?
Over, what do we have there, 25 feet? There's a 2 or 3 to 1, it varies between a 2 and a 3 to 1 slope right there. Right down that 10.
About 30
So
feet.
something significant would have to be done to stabilize that, right?
Well, I don't think anything's, I mean, our intent there is that we wouldn't need anything significant in that location. It's a cut slope, and I think for the most part, the water that's coming from uphill is already intercepted by the medical office building and goes through its own retention basin. So we don't have a situation, we have a lot of, whole hillside is draining down to there, so we're concerned about excess runoff. We have about a 10-foot cut that we can do, and the intent would be to do that at a reasonable slope so we can manage it with, we probably need some erosion control blankets or mats to stabilize it while the grass is growing, but it would be a grass slope. We're not intended to have a, armored riprap slope or anything like that there. The bigger concern is down here where we have a fill slope, which you actually have to compact that fill and get that to stabilize, and it's going to be much higher down here. I mean, we have a 20-foot high fill slope down here, so we're more concerned with that and making sure that gets stabilized.
And the difference in elevation between the two pads?
Well, I mean, here's the thought behind that. There won't be a lot of difference in elevation because they have a shared driveway. And the way that the development is being proposed right now is really a spin-off of how it was originally proposed before it was 2 lots. In that we come in here with a shared drive, and there's a building here, and then ultimately there'll be a building right here, but they're accessing the same drive.
Right.
So the whole pad really will be, I mean, there'll be a slope to it, 2 or 3% across the whole thing, but they're basically at the same elevation. They're not, this site will not be stepped down below this site because they share a drive. Now, if it were to be designed differently and were to come in with a driveway down here maybe, then you'd probably have a step condition, you'd probably have a retaining wall or a slope in between these 2 pad sites. So the way it's laying out is we have a cut slope here and a fill slope here, and basically it's going to end up being one pad site, which is really why we need to, the best way to design this site right now is to get the site, and when I say the site, I mean the 2 lots, to balance, really the earthwork to balance so that you have that balance in there and the 2 sites the same pad elevation.
So Mr. Wilson?
Yeah.
When I look at this, call it the pad,
Right.
on the north lot,
Right.
looks like it's at an elevation of 596, excuse me.
586, and the upper one is
and then the
596. It's about 10 feet.
But the only reason for that right now is because we're anticipating that once this work is done, once the Tractor Supply store is built, we're still going to need some import material to get this pad site up to elevation. We just don't know exactly. I mean, basically, this is a conceptual plan, so I don't know how high we'll get that pad. I don't think we'll get it all the way up, so we may be 6 to 8 to 10 feet below where it ultimately is. We just want to make use of that material on here. We estimate that it'll take 30,000 yards of material to bring this pad up to elevation.
In addition to what's
No.
cut off of the upper lot?
No, in total. And we have the ability to take 20 of it right now and put it here.
The retention pond you show in the higher elevation, that's a little bit counterintuitive. One would think that it would be at the lower elevation.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. If you look at the If you look at the topography on that site, though, once you get up there, the site does slope off in that direction also. So you kind of have a higher elevation really up in this area, and it starts sloping off to the north and to the east. So this whole pad site of Trenton Apply, if you will, it really does want to drain either to the east or to the south. So the idea really is that we're keeping, these will be separate lots. Eventually, we'd like them to have a shared driveway, and that's it.
Right.
They're not shared, retention facilities. And to be quite honest, we don't know what's going to go here. So it makes more sense for that to go there, and it does fit there. I mean, it is draining downhill.
Right, but I can see an issue with that, with the lot that's north of that there'll be a considerable amount of runoff from that'll have to be retained somehow. I mean, I imagine the abutter to the north would be concerned about the runoff.
Right. I mean, that's something we obviously have to take a look at, and we certainly can't increase the flow.
Right.
To that lot.
So you might actually have to put another detention facility when you develop the second lot.
Oh, yeah. This lot, when it's developed, will need when it's paved and built, it will need its own.
Okay. I think that's what his question was. So you would just put a detention facility there when you develop that lot.
Right. Right now, what we're probably looking at is some temporary some temporary facility in here, just a small swell or something, just to collect the runoff that's going to be on here. But again, there's not going to be anything there.
Yeah, pre-development versus post.
Right, but it's you significantly changing the slope by putting the fill there, so
Yes.
you have it's, significantly downhill on the northern side.
Yes, yeah, we will have to look at that, you're correct.
Just finally, you mentioned a piece there that contains some conservation easement. Where is that in relation to this property?
It's on the property. There's a line on the plan with a couple bearings right here. Look at that. It's a 2-acre conservation easement, and the proposed line kind of goes right through it. So each lot will end up with a remnant of that conservation easement. And I mean, the restriction for both lots will be they can't develop within that area. So we're not proposing any green. And it's all the dark green over here.
So when we say that the northern lot will be half of the 9 acres, it looks to me like a third to a half of that northern lot is actually under easement.
That's correct.
Protected by easement.
That's correct. Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So is that part of the, was it 4.4 acres?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the time you take the slope, you put a retention pond in there, and part of its conservation, how much actual developable land have you got left?
Probably
in there?
2 acres.
There'll certainly be a couple of acres of developable land up there.
No, the last thing is, but the movement on that Boulder Point Drive, is that going to affect this thing at all? I know they were going to shove it down to 70 feet or something like that, so you can connect across the road to the other. So is that going to do anything?
Yeah, they're all aware of it because I think he's doing the design for it, so.
Right, but is it going to affect it? That's what I'm asking.
Affect it?
Affect the
No, it won't affect the
acreage or
development
anything?
because there's another lot. It won't affect it. It's lower down,
Mr.
but
Dragon?
he's aware of it.
Mr. Dragon?
Just for some clarification and some help from town planner. This was originally back in August 2008 when this was first brought about.
Correct.
It was my understanding it was going to be just one type of business there, am I correct?
Well, no, remember, it was going to be Tractor Supply and then sort of a shopping center. So there was going to be some, maybe 3 businesses attached to it.
Okay, I didn't recall that, but that's true. So at this point with the subdivision, I see no problem there, but will there be further subdivision of that northern lot now?
There's no intent for further subdivision.
The only reason I ask that is because looking at the evaluation from the town planner and the engineer, you've got quite a few hoops to jump through here. For the driveway, where will the driveway be for the lower site? Where will that be located? The detention basin discharge, where that's going to be located. So all the compliances that will be necessary to go forward with this subdivision And then if it's further subdivided, wouldn't that be affected by some of the changes and things we've done that they will be asked to do on this subdivision? Or will they be restricted, Marion, to do any further subdivision? Because you said it was 1 acre lots in commercial.
Correct. His proposal is just to take the 1 and divide it into 2, and then he's got that conservation easement, so all he has left really is 2 acres. So I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for him to subdivide that again. Yeah.
All the other criteria that he has to.
Right. So he's asking to go from 1 to 2.
Something like, I think, what Mr. Kelly was saying, you know.
Yeah.
My problem with that is that there's no solid, there's nothing solid to say that he can't divide. This is all, I don't think he'll probably ever divide. Well, when we started this lot, we didn't ever think he would ever divide this into 2 lots. Now, we don't think he's going to divide those other 2 lots, but there's no restriction saying that there can't be any more subdivision or anything like that of it. That's my big problem. We leave it sort of loosey-goosey, and then when the time comes, and I'm not talking about this particular item, but they keep coming in and cutting it up and so forth.
Okay. But right now, he's asking for 2. If he was going to change it, then he'd have to come back before.
All of these things hinge on each other. If we allow this, then later on he can come back in and
right, and the planning board could say no, too.
I guess my question is the sensitive nature of the property, with the discharge and the drainage and the, it just seems it's a rough piece of land, I guess, using everyday terminology here, that if they meet these requirements, which they will have to get the approval of this, how much more can we do afterwards if they decide to? And I'm not objecting to that. I'm just trying to get the concept that if we do that, what we've already put in place, how is that going to be impacted and affected to continue to keep going? It would seem to me if the planning board, when it gets to that point, maybe should have a stipulation that we would be limited from doing any more because of the nature and sensitivity of the area, that it wouldn't be feasible to do any more subdivision.
Well, Mr. Dragon, I think you're absolutely right about the quandary that any community is in terms of not having that crystal ball to know exactly what's in the future. But we do have the regulations about what the lot size can be. So if we look at this top lot, or the north lot, and we see it's 4 acres, we know that they're not going to find 6 acres of subdivision in it. So we do know what, in a sense, the worst case scenario could be. So.
Well, that's a concern, that's all, because it is a sensitive area, but I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
And Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I misspoke before when I said that the abutter on the northern side of the property would be concerned about that steep slope. I didn't fully understand then that was conservation, land under conservation easement, which is actually on the same piece of property. Who is the holder of that conservation easement?
The town of Plymouth, I believe. There is a wetland in that conservation.
I'd like to make one other suggestion. I'd like to, just for clarity's sake, is there any possible way you could, the next plan that you do is to show a more defined, out of the plan is the Tenny Mountain? You've turned it bottom side up in a way. And I would just like to have Tenny Mountain indicated on that a little bit clearer.
The mountain or the highway?
It's the highway.
The highway. Well, you have it on your vicinity map, but maybe you can make it blow up of this vicinity map and color it or little.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe making that driveway a little clearer, and that would help.
See, but if I was looking at it right now, I would say that the way Bowler Point turns up, that Walmart would be on the right, and you're talking about the slope that is undeveloped is being higher than the tractor company, which is, if you turn your map bottom side up, it would make more sense.
Well, we have to point it out.
Because if you're,
We can show the
I'm
updated.
confused. Yeah, I did. I turned mine upside down, too.
Same as the tax, right?
Are there any other questions from the board? Have we answered the questions you came?
So,
Yeah.
nope, I think that's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is unfinished and other business. Does anybody have any other business? Moving on to item number 8. Again, we have room for public comments. If anybody would like to speak to any issue tonight.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And finally, we have the issue of adjournment. Mr. Ahern?
Make a motion to adjourn.
At 7:25.
Who seconded,
And-
John Kelly?
Mr. Kelly seconded.
One question, did you learn anything tonight?
Everything's relative.
Yeah. Everything's relative.
Okay.
He said everything's relative.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, John.